Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is time for us to take a look at the Sundowning album in its entirety. I do want to give a disclaimer here if this is your first time watching the channel. I have already covered the entirety of This Place Will Become Your Tomb and Take Me Back to Eden by Sleep Token. So I will be going into this analysis of Sundowning with the Twilight two-way vision, as you might say. I've already seen how it ends. So that affects how I view the entire trilogy, and it has put Sundowning in particular into a completely new light for me. I have a feeling that I kind of understand what Vessel was going for a little bit better than I have in the past, just with new context. So if I say something and you wonder, hey, this is the first album, how does he know this or that? It's because I've already listened to the two other albums. So I will be going into this with that idea in mind. So I will go ahead and get right into it. This is The Night Does Not Belong to God, song number 1 on Sundowning. So I don't think I actually knew that these had visualizers. So that's really nice. So we're getting this really spacey motif like over and over here. With some booming kind of low end. Very atmospheric here. Before Vessel comes in, I just want to point out the synth part here sounds like it's looped, right? It's not like it's being played over and over. It sounds the same every time, which I think kind of gives it this idea of it being kind of like this trance-like state that we're in, with a lot of reverb, a lot of low end, kind of lulling us in here. Along with the visualization we've gotten so far, it looks kind of like the sun going down. Should make sense for the album title, right? That's just the vibe I get. I'll talk a little bit more about why Vessel might be using this kind of soundscape at the end. Now we got the chord changes. I want to talk about the instrumentals behind Vessel's vocals here too. I mean, I feel like I've talked about Vessel's vocals quite a lot as a focus because they are incredible. The deliberateness of them, it's just as incredible as it is on the other two albums here. The stuff going on in the background is actually a little bit more complicated than it sounds. We've got a chord progression going on now, not just that same loop to help move the melody around. That loop is still going on in the background that we heard at the start with that synth. There's also some little extra melodic like counter melody stuff going on with like another synth, it sounds like. So I just wanted to point out because the first time I heard this song, I think this is the very first Sleep Token song I heard. And I wasn't immediately pulled in because I thought it sounded a little too simple. Because I was kind of just like halfway listening to it. Someone said, oh, go check it out. I didn't really get it. Obviously now I do. I love this song. It does its job of setting up the album very well. But I did want to kind of point out the intricacies and appreciate it more than I did on first listen. How he's building this wall of sound. It's not loud necessarily, but it's still there. All the intricacies that we'll see even later in the track, right? Beautiful harmonies, yeah. I feel like that might be one of the most iconic drum beats for me of Sleep Token's discography. Just that offbeat, syncopated, like crash cymbal thing that 2 is doing there. There's a lot going on here, rhythmically, melodically. We've got this offbeat crash thing that is over top of the repeated motif that Vessel's singing, "The night comes down like heaven." But in between his notes, which are very short, we've got a counter melody on the synth. And it just fills the space up for something that could be a really simple song. They've expanded it, and they're adding, obviously, kind of like the first guitar sound I think we've heard comes in. The distorted guitar kind of hitting these syncopated beats. It's really cool. I really like the vibe they have for this. Here. Okay, so we're getting into this like really quiet section. I want you to listen really carefully because there's something going on in the background which I think might be relevant here. There's a little sound, and I'll like kind of put my finger up whenever I hear it and see if you hear it. If you have headphones, it's gonna help because it's very quiet. It's right there. I don't know if we're going to hear it again, but there's little glitches in the background. Little audio glitches. Now, that's very interesting to me to hear that in this song. After all of the weird kind of digital, algorithm, computer imagery of Take Me Back to Eden. I have a couple theories about that. Maybe that is kind of just getting to the idea that all of this is manufactured, like right off the bat, song 1 of the trilogy, that Vessel's relationship with sleep is kind of his manufactured thing. I also think that it kind of sounds a little bit like a spirit box, which if you don't know what that is, if you've never seen any like ghost hunting shows or played a video game like Phasmophobia or something, that's how I kind of know it from. You can set up a spirit box, and supposedly spirits can use it to kind of choose words or like use radio frequencies to talk to you. And that kind of distorted, weird digital freak out thing that we hear in the dead space of this section kind of sounds like that to me. I'll let you listen for it. We tango endlessly, like lovers entwined. I know for the last time, you will not be mine. It's so melancholy, so sad. So give me the night, the night, the night. song has such a good push and pull. We get the classic layering. If you don't know what I'm talking about, we get this classic sleep token layering here where we get, you know, the kind of what I might call the chorus, I guess. The night comes down like heaven. And then we get that bridge section layered right on top. That's a Vessel classic. He loves to do that. And it always sounds good to kind of bring things home. So I'll back up again and we'll just ride this one out. Just like haunting vocals over top. There are some weird sound effects in the back of this now I'm listening to it really carefully. It sounds like really distant voices. Like chattering, maybe. It almost sounds like somebody yelling in the background. All right, Ed. So, man, let me just so we can actually see the. Okay, so this was, like I said, my first Sleep Token song that I heard. I wasn't super into it the first time I heard it. However, now I kind of understand kind of what's going on here. So, like normal, I want to jump right into the lyrics. The night does not belong to God, right? When we look at this first, I guess, verse you would call it, or intro, we see the lyrics, when you live by daylight, with angels at your side, in order now bestowed by the light of the sunrise. And you remember everything, only till the sun recedes once again. This immediately sets up this idea of the duality of kind of night and day in Vessel's world, where we have this deification of kind of the day, right? It seems that way anyway. And then he says, you remember everything until the sun recedes once again. But then it says the night comes down like heaven. So it's not so much that he thinks the night is like evil or anything so far. We've got kind of both sides of the same coin. It's very interesting because you would think there'd be some kind of dichotomy here where he compares the night to heaven and maybe the day to not being heaven, but it seems like they're both kind of angelic at this point. Now, I interpret this first little bit differently now that we've listened to Take Me Back to Eden. I think this first bit could possibly be the cycling of the album. So we're going from Euclid to this song. And I kind of envision this part as the character that we called Euclid watching, or not Euclid, sorry. Vessel is watching Euclid ascend out of the cycle. That's my interpretation of what's going on here now that I know what happens in Take Me Back to Eden. Vessel's stuck in the cycle, but Euclid has transcended it. And I think that's what this first little bit is. It's Vessel watching Euclid escape. And of course, because Vessel will always be a vessel for sleep, that's just what he is, we get him sucked back into the night. And of course, he thinks it's great. It comes down like heaven, right? And we're stuck in the same cycle again, right? We've got the whites of your eyes turn black in the low light, and turning divine, we tangle endlessly. Which this is kind of iconic at this point, the idea of tangling endlessly. That's kind of the whole thing with Sleep Token. It's just endless kind of sadness, dealing with ideas of grief, right? So Vessel, some part of him will always be tangling with this, dealing with this grief. Now there's still kind of this idea, like lovers entwined. I know for the last time you will not be mine, so give me night. I think that this, in the context of this song, is Vessel kind of knows that he can never really be with Sleep, right? That she's gone. And the night is the only way he can visit her. Now, this, of course, is completely kind of turned on its head in Euclid. So it's weird to hear this again, because in Euclid, it's kind of a hopeful thing. It's like Vessel has split off into Euclid. Euclid is transcending, saying, I know that we'll never be together, so I'm out. But here, it's very much a sad thing. This is kind of escapism, right? Into your own mind, into the night, to visit this person again. There's not a whole lot of lyrics here to get into, but that's my kind of read on what's going on here. Obviously, listening to all this in the context of the song is a lot more powerful, especially this part right here, this bridge part, because it's very haunting the way that Vessel delivers those vocals. It's very ethereal. He's using that falsetto like melody, kind of like, it's not messy, but it doesn't quite line up. The melody's not as like locked in as it is in Euclid. I don't know. It's unnerving to me and very sad. So that's kind of how I'm interpreting these lyrics in the grand scheme of the trilogy, what they mean to me now. Of course, I want to talk a little bit about Sundowning as a whole now. First of all, Sundowning. If you don't know what Sundowning is, Sundowning refers to a state of confusion occurring in the late afternoon and spanning into the night. It's typically kind of associated with dementia. The idea that people who have some kind of mental disorder like that can experience a lot of confusion, just being kind of aggressive and weird at the end of the day, that their mood can completely change. I think obviously this makes a lot of sense with Sleep Token. If you've ever heard the other albums, he kind of just loses it at night is the idea, because he's trying to visit, his lost love, Sleep. In some ways, it's a insanity that he is kind of welcoming, because it lets him visit her. And that's kind of the difference with Sundowning is, with Take Me Back to Eden, Vessel was very combative, but what we're going to see with Sundowning is he's very welcoming to this process. He might even be doing well, let me just go ahead and get into it. So let me take you, just hang with me for a second here, because this is going to go somewhere. I was watching the movie Hereditary for the first time. I don't know if you've ever seen it. If you haven't, there's this specific sigil in the movie that keeps showing up, and it is supposed to refer to one of the princes of hell, supposedly in the movie. So I was curious, and I was like, oh, let me go look it up. Apparently, it comes from a book called, I might butcher the name of it, but the Pseudo-Monarchia Daemonum. It's a really old book that talks about the princes of hell, basically the hierarchy of hell. It gives it, like, there's a king, there's princes, there's all this stuff. But what was really interesting is I looked up the summoning sigils. And this was super interesting to me because I looked at it and I thought, I've seen something like this before. These look really familiar. which, if we go back to the video, every single one of the songs on this album have some kind of sigil that to me looks pretty similar. Not exact, obviously. There's no exact matches. They're like custom made sigils for each song, but they do look like summoning sigils. Now, what I do want to point out is I don't think that all of these shapes here are necessarily summoning, like for summoning demons specifically. It could be like entities that are, friendly or whatever. But I think that what we're looking at with Sundowning, what Vessel is going for, is the idea of a ritual, a summoning ritual for sleep, which is very obvious when they first started. They called their shows rituals, I think. But I think this just gives more credence to it. The idea that sleep is not here physically. He has to go through all kinds of things to bring her about, to invite her in. And kind of the trance-like music at the start of this song, how it just kind of flows, the push and pull, I think is kind of like trying to get you into a trance. Like it's like a mantra that you hear over and over again to try to get you into this headspace to allow sleep to come in. That's how I interpret this song. The sigils are cool. This one does kind of look like a sunset, right? Like an abstract caveman drawing of a sunset. One thing I do know is that the triangle usually symbolizes in this kind of, I don't know if you'd call it like alchemy or spirit alchemy, I don't know. Usually symbolizes, I think, summoning. Like instead of a summoning circle, like triangles usually kind of are the invitation. So that's my thoughts here on The Night Does Not Belong to God. I know I had a lot to say to kind of set up the album, but I just wanted to make it clear. I think how I'm going to view the rest of this album is through the lens of this being kind of a spiritual summoning, which is also why I pointed out kind of the spirit box kind of sounds in the middle of this song. But let me know what you think. Was this the first Sleep Token song you heard? I know they have songs before this, but I feel like Sundowning being their first album may be a lot of people's first foray into the band. How did you feel about them? Did they have to grow on you like they had to grow on me? It took a while for them to click. But I will be back with the next song from Sundowning in the next video, and I will see you then.